Today I want to talk about California going all in with a sweeping plan that bans the sale of new gas-powered cars starting in 2035. Basically, you will not be able to purchase a gas-powered vehicle after 2035, but the quotas allow for 20% of zero-emission cars sold to be plug-in hybrids. This does not mean that your gas-powered vehicles are going to be outlawed. Now, before we continue, subscribe to our channel for content on all things automotive to get notified as soon as new content drops, and check out our website for incredible discounts where you don't even need to negotiate. Our goal is to make car shopping as easy as getting an iPhone. Now, this is huge because this is going to influence a lot of other states to adopt the same mandate. Most recently, Washington State and Massachusetts are following suit. So let's not just focus on California, because regardless of the mandate, pretty much every new car sold in 2035 is probably going to be electric anyway. Overall, Ford expects 40% to 50% of its global vehicle volume to be fully electric by 2030. Toyota and Volvo are both aiming to be fully electric by 2030. Honda estimates to be fully electric by 2040. For better or worse, it certainly looks like we are approaching the end of an era. Now, the real question is whether these are achievable in a state that's marred by outages, and how we can use this to gauge the feasibility of this mandate for the overall country. Because let's face it, we are headed that direction, but also consider the direct influences by other currently sensitive and key issues such as supply chain, labor, critical mineral availability and pricing, and the ongoing semiconductor shortage, and the most important piece of all, inflation. These are all complicated, intertwined, and far-reaching issues well beyond the control of either the California Regulatory Board or the auto industry. As things stand right now, no, it does not look achievable, but it is important to not view this from the present day lens. So the million-dollar question is, what is going to happen? Now, before we dive deep into that question, I think it is critical to review history, because in this case, it is extremely relevant, and history can provide an insight or sense on the shape of things to come. The automobile itself is not a new technology. It has been around for a little over a century. The first affordable and mass-produced car came out in 1908, which was the Ford Model T. And from 1909 to 1918, the number of cars on the road grew nearly 20-fold. The question you need to ask yourself, were there gas stations in place throughout the country as soon as the first automobiles were delivered? Of course not. The only place to actually buy gas was at the pharmacy or hardware store, which sold fuel in 5-gallon jugs alongside the road, which obviously is extremely inconvenient. Now, we actually looked up to see what some of these look like, and to our surprise, there's a number of these going on sale on eBay, and they're fetching a pretty penny. Not sure why anyone would buy those, but anyway, by 1935, however, there were more than 200,000 gas stations that were built to handle the new vehicle surge. So this brings us to the first key issue. Currently, there is a lack of electric stations, but like what we witnessed with gas stations, it is foreseeable to expect electric charging stations to experience similar growth over the next decade. Now, obviously, the blueprints are being laid out now. California, for example, is on the fast track to build out both electric vehicle charging stations and hydrogen fueling stations to ensure that everyone can charge and refuel when and where they need to. Additionally, the U.S. Departments of Transportation and Energies both announced on February 10th, 2022, that nearly $5 billion will be made available under the new Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, the NEVI, which was established by President Joe Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law to build out a national electric vehicle charging station network. Okay, so now you can go on those YOLO EV Life road trips. The second issue, which is critical and a lot of people are discussing, is the current power grid's inability to support the EV transformation. If you are from California, obviously you are too familiar with the power grid blackouts due to the extreme weather, but what we want to do is we want to look at China, because there are a lot of videos out there referencing what is currently happening in China as a reason for why this mandate will fail. China is unequivocally the leader in EV adoption, and they encountered a globally unprecedented 70-day heat wave with temperatures reaching as far as 113 degrees. As Chinese publications have reported, finding a working charging station in Sichuan and the neighboring regions took as long as 2 hours. Most public charging stations, including those operated by leading EV brands like Tesla and China's NIO and XPeng, were closed in the region because of government restrictions on commercial electricity usage. But this only tells you a part of the story. And now this. In the the case of China, there was a severe drought and shortages in the hydropower supply, and that is what has been wreaking havoc on their power grids. So the issue is that there are no alternatives in the event of a disruption. You need to have a distributed system of energy storage and better long-distance power transmission, as well as alternative clean energy sources like large-scale offshore wind or solar farms. So China has exposed the weakness that the development of charging infrastructure is lagging behind EV demand. But because the demand for EV is not going away, it's actually going to start increasing. There will finally be a financial driver from all sectors to expedite the construction of new solar and wind infrastructure, improve existing power lines, and build better battery storage capacity. Take a look at this graph where renewables have been steadily increasing year over year, and with the influx of investments, this will increase even more rapidly. So basically, California and other states will need backup dispatchable power to account for energy losses when renewables like wind and solar can't produce electricity due to changes in weather. Now, again, the blueprints are being laid out. President Joe Biden has already passed a historic $1.2 trillion bipartisan package on August 10th, 2021, with $65 billion for grid infrastructure to avoid issues like what we witnessed in China. The third issue is the cost of EVs. As things currently stand, many consumers are opting for gas-powered cars as EVs are about $10,000 more expensive upfront. Now, this is pretty substantial for the average American household and even more difficult for low-income households. How do you address this pretty significant issue? Well, the administration has recently passed the Inflation Reduction Act with stringent rules in place to qualify in order for you to qualify for the EV credit. Obviously, consumer options will not be made available overnight. We're seeing a lot of price hikes in EVs. Good customer options are not going to be made available overnight, but you can opt for this bizarre Alibaba EV that is $2,100. Wow, look at that. Actually, let's take a look at the front. Jesus, that is hideous. On a positive note, at least you can create your own lane if you're stuck in traffic. Literally, you can just slice right down the middle of the road between lanes at a whopping 25 miles an hour. The Inflation Reduction Act has put MSRP caps in place as a driver for manufacturers to build more affordable EVs for the public. The key thing here is the restoration of supply chains will cause a small drop in EV prices, but there are other factors that will lead to a bigger drop down the line. As more manufacturers introduce new EV models, competition will drive down prices even further. Just like every other mass-produced product, manufacturers will develop efficiencies that will improve the design as well as reduce costs. We have seen this with every other piece of technology. Automobiles are no different. They actually went down 33% over the last few decades. So ignore anyone that states otherwise, because the EV market is still pretty much in its infancy, like this guy from the Washington Post that complains about the price point, battery life, depletion problem, and obviously charging convenience. How can you expect any of these to be an issue in 3 to 5 years from now? Yes, I get it. Battery does degrade in colder climates, and there's other issues and flaws that you could point out. But technology advances, Henry. Seriously, computers were as big as your house when you were a child. So you have to think down the road. Anyways, think of the Fed and states that are pumping cash as stimulants. But again, the true driver here, though, will be the customers. Look at this graph and the EV registration state by state. You're not going to find a year-over-year growth under 30%. Now, this data pertains to 2021, and according to Electric, a news outlet, they will see even larger growth when comparing 2022 numbers, as the US has recently passed the 5% threshold of the EV share of the entire market, a number many have labeled as a critical mass tipping point for widespread adoption. To put it mildly, there is way too much opportunity for the private sector to sit on the sidelines, expect investments from both public and private sectors to be incredibly significant. But at every corner, you will see negative news pumped from lobbyists such as this one. Just as we witnessed the introduction of the first mass-produced automobile in 1908 and the ensuing changes in society to include infrastructure support, changes are going to be slow and fragmented at first, but there is no reason to panic, because responses will continue to be patched from both the public and private sectors to ensure the stability of this market as we transition from gas powered to EV. Now that's it for this video. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Like and subscribe to our channel to get notified as soon as new content drops, and see you in the next video.